Hey, welcome back to the Full Weight of Joy podcast, the podcast for women who are done stressing about the weight of the world and wants to step into the full weight of joy. And what does that mean? The full weight of joy is really, it's your own definition. It is we carry a weight one way or another. Either we carry the weight of the world and all of our responsibilities and others' expectations and the feeling like we're never enough and that there's always something more. Or we get to carry the full weight of joy where we realize that God's made us so special that we can live out our purpose, that we're stepping into our purpose, that we understand how He wired us. We understand our calling. We understand our unique value proposition, our zone of genius, what makes us different, and how our uniques are not our weaknesses, but they're actually our strengths. And we live it. That's what the goal is. And today I want to talk about going beyond personality assessments. Are you a fan of personality assessments? I am. I love learning about personal dynamics. I love learning about people. I've taken every test, every possible test that I've gotten my hands on, I have taken, from, what Disney princess were you, to, all those stupid Facebook quizzes that, they're just there where they are, they're just fun. But then there's also Myers-Briggs. I've taken the, personality assessments for different jobs or different roles, and as you know, my favorite ones are the Enneagram and Clifton Strengths Finder. But I wanted to talk to you about, because it doesn't matter what personality assessment that you've taken. And my guess is you've taken a couple. You know what color you are, you know what animal you are, you know your spiritual gifts, because that's another assessment, is the spiritual gifts test you can take. I know many churches, when you become members or start going to their new orientation, they give you these assessments to see how can you serve. And it's really interesting because how many assessments have you taken and you've dove into it and then you file it away and you do nothing with it? With the Enneagram, it's a little different too, because now it can be, it can be weaponized a little bit. It can be, there's trends. Now that we've said the word Enneagram, I'm sure that you're going to start seeing on Instagram, on Facebook, and on, different Enneagram things. And a lot of times that really focuses on the negatives of each of the number versus what's the positive. And one of the things that I want to, a secret, a bonus tip, pro tip, is that the negatives that you believe are associated with your number are actually part of your superpower. And so I don't like the Trendiagram. I don't like I think the memes are funny, but you're not boiled down to a meme. All right. But the thing is, our church, I absolutely love our church. I love that it wants to understand its people and how they work best. And so our church has on their office doors, all the staff have on a little placard with their name, their Enneagram number, their Clifton Strengths, their Myers-Briggs, and their DISC. It has all this information. And then I've asked a couple of them some questions about, well, what do you guys use it? It's amazing. I love that you've done this, and that as a whole, you're how to work best with this person and how can I relate to this person? But they're well, we just took the assessments and they put a placard up. How many times have you taken the assessment? You read the instruction, you read the description, I should say, not the instruction, the description, and then you just set it aside. You kind of get some insight, but there's no action, there's no implementation, there's no change there. And so I wanted to talk about that, because when we're really stepping into who God called us to be, when we're stepping into this zone of self-awareness, and we're going to dive in deeper this year. And I have a program coming up, and it's called Align and Shine, because we're going to talk about the first level of self-awareness, these first milestones you get to explore, because once you align yourself with who God created you to be, it is a lot easier and a lot more joyful and a lot less energy sucking to shine your light, to live out your purpose, to give your gifts away, because all of our strengths and our gifts and our talents were not meant for just us alone. It is meant to be of service. It is meant to to use in our assignment from God. It's meant to be part of our purpose. And even if you may not know your purpose, even in your day-to-day job, like even in your 9 to 5, even in the hats that you wear, your mom hat, your sibling hat, your sister hat, your aunt hat, your friend hat, and if you're a dude listening to this, your dad hat, your brother hat, it plays into who we are as a whole. But just taking the assessments, and even like so many times, and with the Enneagram, a lot of it's written in the negative because that's what we can identify with first. And then we do that and we don't do anything with it because it kind of demoralizes us a little bit. It kind of, or even that Myers-Briggs, you'll get this information and it's like, okay, great. Now what? So I want to encourage you. I want to talk just a few minutes today about going beyond just taking the assessment. I want to encourage you to actually look at the inscriptions, look at the description, and ask yourself, what part of this aligns? What part of this resonates with me? What are some of with who I want to be? Let me say that. The person that I want to be, what changes can I make to align with that? I know with Enneagram and Clifton Strengths, and I'm going to focus on those two because I do love them so much. I feel like those two in particular give us a path to growth, and our strengths our strengths can shift over time based on what we were focused on. Like when I was in the military, my strengths were a little bit different than they are now, simply because of what you focus on grows. And you focus on growth, and your strengths, you can intentionally get stronger in the areas. So they didn't shift much. Like they still stayed in the top 10, but it's like which one came first. So I really like it because it doesn't drastically change. My Myers-Briggs has drastically changed. My DISC has drastically changed since I've changed roles, since I've changed focuses, since I've grown as a person. And with the Enneagram, you are the number you are, like the number you get, the number you are, you stay in that with that number as your primary. However, there's a path to growth where you see the areas that you can develop, you can see your strengths and your weaknesses, and you get to add flavor, you get to add salt and pepper, you get to add layers to your understanding about yourself. But your core motivations, your core avoidances stay the same, but how you approach them is different. So that's one of the reasons why I like the Clifton Strengths and the Enneagram, is because I feel like it gives you a place to go. But it says, okay, so this will always be your core motivation. How do you use that? How do you want to use that to get the life you want? So if you're not stuck, like let's just say an Enneagram 5, like it's an Enneagram 5 are like our learners. They're the ones who are our information gatherers and our researchers. But what if they want to be a leader? Well, one of my best friends, he's a 5, and he is a really amazing leader. And so just because he's more introverted, just because, and even the introvert and extrovert, like you're not stuck there. That just gives you an understanding of how you're wired. Then you get to decide how you want to use it. And that's where I love this coaching through this. And I love the SHINE framework. And I love being able to understand. And this is why the self-awareness is not selfish. It's not meant to, okay, this is how I am, I can never change. It's meant to allow you to step out of your box, see the world as it is, and then decide, how best do I show up in it? How do I want to show up in it? And still be true to yourself. And so some of the common mistakes is people take the assessments and then file them away. They miss the powerful application. If you haven't even asked yourself, okay, what part of this because looking at with the Enneagram, the high side, the healthy side, which of these elements do I want to work towards? You're really doing yourself a disservice because you're focusing on the negative. You're focusing on the stress, or saying, oh man, I wish one day I can get there. Well, you can get there a lot faster than you realize. And so knowing your strength isn't enough. You need to actively leverage them. So with the Clifton Strengths, understanding that relationship building is one of my top strengths, like actually that category shows up multiple times in my top 5. And I think actually 3 out of the 5 are relationship building. It gives me insight to say, okay, when I meet somebody, I get to build a relationship with them first. I get to see them as a person and I get to just connect with them. And then I will, the strategic and the futurist, all of the other things can come in and you can see like, okay, when it comes with friends and when it comes with relationships, connecting and building the relationship itself is one of my focuses naturally. So now I can use that to my benefit. So what are your core motivations? What are your core strengths? And how can you leverage them? Because if we just take it and file it away, it's doing us no good. And this is where another point I want to focus on this year is the fact that information alone is not going to get us anywhere. We have more information now. They did a study that we have more information in one day than the average, like 60 years ago, had in a lifetime. Like that's not, like people who are living today experience that. Like in the information they had available to them in a lifetime is what we process in one day. Information is not our problem. We get information overload, we get information saturation, we get information anxiety, and also we have that false, like, I need to know all of this before I act, which in reality, we need to get just enough information. And that's when we lean in on faith and grace and compassion, and we go. And so getting information about your Clifton strengths and your Enneagram is not going to get you the change you want. It's the making the intentional action steps. It's the everyday taking one step further. It's committing to yourself that nothing changes till nothing changes. So you get to make a change. It doesn't have to be drastic. It can be simple as before I speak, I'm going to take a moment to think about how my motivation is showing up in my gut instinct, in my initial reaction. So when, like with parenting, I'm an Enneagram 1 and I'm a natural fixer. And my Enneagram thought of the day, yesterday or the day before, it says that be aware of your natural tendency to try to take the responsibility to fix everyone. And it's like, ooh, how is that showing up in parenting? Well, I have a son who is about to turn 17. He is he's halfway through his junior year. It is time to start picking colleges and picking a direction. I don't need you to know everything. However, recognizing that him being an Enneagram 8, he feels very out of control. So what can we do to get him in control? And so my tendency to fix it is not helping the situation. I don't quite know how to handle this situation. I've been praying about it and I've been working through it and I've been trying to have conversations with very smart people, other Enneagram 8s who have been through puberty and, 8 males. So I'm like, okay, what would get through to you? But still, if I wasn't aware of my tendencies, I would keep going the same direction. But now it's allowed me to step back and look at it from a different perspective. How can he hear it versus how can I say it? Because me saying it the way I want to say it is not resonating. And so understanding this level is one of the benefits of understanding these personality assessments. It's not meant just to say, well, this is the only way I can only be a teacher and I can only fix things. And that's, you either take it or leave it. This is who I am. There's something to be said about being able to step back out of your own ego and see someone and meet them where they are. And the Enneagram and Clifton Strengths allows you to do that. Another thing is the understanding strengths in action. So how strengths, they show up in different contexts. So another area that an action step is understanding, when you've discovered your strengths, or your core motivations, you can ask yourself, how is this showing up in my day-to-day life? How did it show up in the past? Because a lot of times it's easier to review and to reflect than it is to make forward-facing decisions, right? We can look to see what happened in the past, but this is a great area because you can see, okay, where did my motivation to fix things show up? It worked great for the military. It actually worked great for therapy as well. And in my need to fix things, like it works, like I am naturally a teacher. Which it's a whole nother story where I went to school, I went to college initially for teaching, but I was like, this is not for me because in my worldview, what I knew is, to be the traditional path was to become a school teacher. And that's not what, like, now I teach adults. So it's like full circle and such a God moment. But again, it's when I understand how he wired me, I can see the decisions that I've made. I can see like my strength was always, and one of my gifts is teaching, and the traditional path is not the way he intended for me to use it. And so that's where when we understand how he's wired us, how we understand how he's made us and the strengths and the gifts and the talents and our core avoidances, then we can start to see a bigger picture. So this is why just taking the test and setting it aside is not actually useful and actually can be harmful because it can leave you like hopeless, like, oh, I'm an Enneagram 1. I have an inner critic that constantly berates me and tells me I'm not good enough. Well, I guess this is the way it's got to be. Well, I've learned to work with my inner critic versus work against her. I've learned to determine, is she correct? And is she just like helpful? Or do I just need to silence her and I need to do it anyway, even though my brain is telling me to, put the brakes on. So our strengths show up in different contexts. However, when we are reviewing things from the past, these highlights, we can see where the strengths showed up. And it's a lot easier to see the strengths when you're looking for them than when you are trying to figure out, okay, what is the common denominator here? So these personality assessments help you like bring a context and give you some vocabulary to look for. The difference between raw and mature strengths as well. Like understanding we can cultivate our strengths. And in fact, it makes more sense and it takes less effort and it's a lot more fun to when you discover your strengths, what you're good at, what your natural tendencies are, your natural gifts and talents. And then you pour gas and you intentionally lean into that direction, into those strengths versus finding out what your lowest strengths are. I think I've mentioned before that one of my daughter's strengths for Clifton Strengths is woo, winning others over. That is like almost dead last. It's probably one of the last 3, which means that if I try to win others over, it actually feels inauthentic. I'm not good at it. It doesn't come naturally to me. I can build a relationship with you and then we can connect that way. But just trying to win you over is not like, I can't win you over. Like I have to connect with you. Whereas with her, she does. Like I've seen it. People who are very put off by her flamboyant and her very curious and sarcastic nature, which I absolutely love. However, when they see that she's for them, that she is actually a encourager and that she's just herself, which in teenagers anyway, like I tried to explain to her that most girls who, mean girls, it's because they don't understand you or they are jealous. They don't know how to be themselves. And so that when they see someone who's authentically them, it scares them. And they have a little bit of jealousy because that's what they want to be able to do. And so like talking through that has been helpful for her because it hurts her feelings when people like react to her strongly at the beginning, but she always wins them over. But anyway, the difference between the raw and the mature strengths is that you can cultivate your strengths. You can cultivate your core motivations and you can see how you can pour gas on it versus going after things that you're not good at. That is why we need community. That is why we need each other because my strengths and her strengths are different. So together we're stronger. Together our lights shine brighter, which is why I love the group that I'm putting together. It's because that's what we get to do is see how other people's strength, how collaboration, how working together actually makes life easier for us. And we're able to shine a lot brighter. And so we have that. Let's see the next. Why some strengths might feel like weaknesses are overused. Okay. So this is another area where when our strengths, a lot of times we downplay them because we don't realize that things that come natural to us don't come natural to other people. And so we downplay them or they feel like when we're overusing them. They feel like weaknesses, but they don't have to be. And so when we understand why we lean on this particular direction, we understand, well, that's because it's our natural tendency. We can decide, okay, is this what we want to do, or do we want to shift it? It gives us the information to make the change. It gives us the information to take action and decide which way do we want to go. We get to respond instead of react to situations. But there's so many different strengths. And I already mentioned the strengths in partnerships, because when we have different strengths, we understand, like, this is what I bring to the table. This is what you bring to the table. And instead of 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5. And so then we look at what strengths what are some of the things, the holes we still have? Well, we can bring someone else in who has those strengths. And then all of a sudden it's exponentially charging us. So, and then also just when we understand our strengths, our daily decisions become easier. When we know what our motivations are, and when we know what we're avoiding naturally, then it is so much easier to make decisions that work in our favor. Because the things that we're avoiding doesn't mean that we should be avoiding them. It means that those are our safety mechanisms. I'm not talking about avoiding, like, there's a cliff, but my GPS is telling me to go off it. Years ago, I think I was pregnant with Isaac. So we're looking at like 17 and a half years ago, when Garmin, I think it was one of the first Garmin GPSs in the car. And we were driving in the mountains, Northern California, and it kept telling us to go off the cliff. Like, so it was hilarious. We're like, well, no, we're not going to do that. It kept on recalculating. And we're like, okay, well, we can't use this because it actually is trying to, kill us. But understanding that it allows us to, so it's not that. It's not the, it's my strength, so I'm just going to do it. It allows us to make a better decision, because if we understand what our core motivations, our core fears, our core avoidances are, they're naturally going to stop us. They're going to put up roadblocks, and we can decide, okay, is the road really blocked, or is it just a little pothole that I can go around and keep going, that I'm just recognized, like, okay, I'm entering, unique or uncharted territory. Let me proceed with caution. So understanding that our personality assessments, understanding the way we're wired, it gives us the ability to do that. And so as I close here, as I have a lot more things that I'm like, oh man, I can just talk about this forever. But the biggest thing is that you've done the work to do the assessments. I know, and you wouldn't do the assessment if you didn't care, if you didn't want to know. I love having insights about myself. And I love when I read something and I'm like, they get me. It's so true. And so if we stop there, we're really doing ourselves disservice. So I want to encourage you to pull out one of the assessments you've taken recently. Pull it out, look at it and see, okay, how does this resonate? How does this show up in my life? Whether it's the Myers-Briggs or the Clifton Strengths or the DISC or Enneagram, I want you to ask yourself, how is it showing up? And how have the last couple of decisions you made, instinct decisions, the ones that you didn't really work through, you made naturally, how many of them involved your core avoidance or your core motivation? How often did that show up without you intentionally making the decision? You know what I'm talking about. These decisions that just kind of happen, show up and then you make it. How did your core motivations, how did your, whether it's Myers-Briggs, your different tendencies, how do they show up? I would just encourage you to take a look at that and ask yourself, is that the way I want it to show up, or do I want something different? The whole point of these assessments is not to put you in a box. And if it is an assessment that says, this is what you are, this is who you are, and you can never, you'll never be more, throw that away and don't listen to them. God made us to where we can grow. We're being refined through fire, through our trials. We're being refined through relationships and even our relationship with Him. You are not the same when you start your quiet time and when you end it, right? You've gained something from that time. We weren't meant to stay the same. We're not meant we're not meant to stay in a box. One of the things that our pastor, I think I mentioned this last podcast episode too, like he talked about how following our calling is uncomfortable, it takes discipline, it's fanatical, and it's dangerous. Because it feels dangerous because it's something that he's calling us to more than we think we are. And really, it's more because he fills in our weaknesses. He has given us those strengths and given us these tendencies and these gifts to be used, not to hoard, not to just, when you get to the pearly gates and he's like, okay, what have you done with what I gave you? Do you want to say, I read all the books and I know myself really well? And he's like, okay, great. You know how I created you. You know how I wired you. What'd you do with it? And you're like, well, I studied. I learned. That's not the point. That's not the fulfillment that we're looking for. That's not even the joy. The joy is seeing our gifts in action, stepping out and doing things that we never thought possible, but are, because that's the path God laid out for us. Living our calling is where the fulfillment and the joy and even the peace comes from, because we can have that peace that God's with us along the journey. So if you're ready to discover, like, you can take, I have a couple of assessments that my clients we take at the beginning just to give a baseline and give us some vocabulary, understand how he's wired us. And then it's like, okay, now what? If you want to take that next level, if you want to dive into who he's called you to be and then how to live it, like, get on my calendar. Let's talk. Let's see what's possible for you. Let's see what this God dream that has been brewing in your heart for probably years. And it's just getting louder and louder. And you might even be feeling a little more guilty about it because you haven't done anything with it. And you feel it and you're like, like there's that pull to explore it, but then that drawback of, well, it's, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I don't have resources. I'm not good enough. I don't know if I'm capable. Friend, if God called you to it, you best do it. So if you're ready to discover what he called, like, name it and claim it. And if you're ready to get on the dangerous path, which has been so much fun, like, get on my calendar and let's chat. There's no strings attached. It's simply, if you want to just walk away with understanding yourself a little bit more, or what your next step is, that's great too. However, if I know you at all, I know it's the fact that you are this more that's God stirring in your heart, has been there for a while, and you're ready to kind of explore and see where it goes. It's not as hard as you think. There is a journey. We can take the Shine framework and walk you through the steps to get you on this journey and to embody your purpose, which is the E in Shine, is embody. Like, just allow it to happen and become your purpose. And so if you're ready to do that, get on my calendar. And as I close today, if you have not left me a rating or review, I would really appreciate if you did that. This podcast, I am working to grow this podcast. I'm working to get it into more people's ears. I'm working on getting more of my videos onto YouTube from this, just so I can help impact more and help more people, like, align their life with who God called them to be, so they can shine their light and live a fulfilled life, lived a legacy, live purpose and peace and joy that they're looking for. Because the secret sauce is understanding how God wired you. Understanding that your calling is not the same as your friends, even if you guys are partners. There's still differences that, once you understand that, it makes it so much more fun. So get on my calendar. Let's chat. I have my first group, Align and Shine, is coming out. We're starting in February, but I am filling it up now. If you want one of those spots, get on my calendar so we can chat. Because the only way, there's not like a button of like, let's do this. I want to make sure it's the right people in it. And which means that, we just talk about it to make sure that you know what it is and that it's working for you. So with that, like, get on my calendar. Let's chat. Let's start 2025 with a bang. Let's start to dive into who God called us to be, because he created you exactly how he needed you to be, exactly how the world needs you. And so do you want to step into that and really shine? All right. Choose joy, friend, until joy chooses you. And I will see you soon. Bye for now.